Hey Ummas! Welcome to the Old Umma Club. I'm Joyce.
And I'm Sophia.
We are two friends in Los Angeles who had so many great coffee chats about our love for Jesus, being Korean in biracial marriages, and having kids mid-career, mid-30s. So we decided to turn it into a podcast.
So grab a cup of coffee and join our conversations about aching backs, motherhood, marriage, Jesus, and everything in between. You ready?
하나,
둘,
셋, let's go!
Let's go. Hey, Ummas.
Hello!
This is Sophia and this is
Joyce.
Okay. And we had to take a pause because Joyce had to burp.
It still hasn't happened. I don't know when it's going to happen.
You gotta to wait.
I definitely don't want to try to force it because with pregnancy, you don't know what's going to come up with that burp. So I'm going to just let it go naturally. Maybe the spirit will bring it out of me.
Great. Burping is a sign of contentment. All right. So today, this is season 1, episode 5, and we are talking about faith.
Yes.
Reflecting back on how we were raised in the faith as children, and then thinking about what was good and what was helpful and what wasn't so helpful. And this is a great practice because we unconsciously adopt a lot of what our parents, depending on how our parents raised us in the faith, we adopt a lot of ideas and perceptions on faith and God and the Bible. And it's good to look back and see what is actually true and what isn't, what is more cultural and what is maybe just the way our parents shaped us and the environment of the family. And because we now are tasked with the same duty that our parents had, which is to raise our own children in the faith and pass on our faith to our children. And that is a humongous responsibility, and we don't take it lightly. We take it with a lot of trepidation and fear, holy fear, I would say, because we want to raise our kids well. And by the grace of God, we are both still committed to our Christian faith. But there are things that we want to kind of switch it up when it comes to how we raise our own children. So we're kind of taking a deep dive into a spiritual background and what spiritual practices we want to preserve and pass on to our children in our family.
Yes. It'll be an interesting conversation because Sophia and I have such very different raising. Even just
very
our
different
family, our family backgrounds, and just how we were raised in our faith, and even just the experience of our faith into our adulthood, like how that carried through. So I felt like it's going to be interesting to kind of dive into that for both of us.
Yeah.
And to also self-reflect, because I think sometimes at least for myself, self-reflection is a lost art, especially as a mother. You're kind of always thinking like what's one step next to the next. So it's kind of nice for us to have this space to kind of sit down and reflect. Yeah. So starting off with our childhood faith. Have you had any time to reflect, or what are your thoughts?
So I grew up in a missionary and a pastor's family. So my father was both a missionary and a pastor. And when I was 4, my father felt called to a missionary to the Chinese people. And so we immigrated from South Korea to Singapore. And we spent 10 years in Singapore, during which my father was preaching. He was in Bible school for a bit. And then he was kind of traveling most of the year around Southeast Asia, preaching to the Chinese people. And then when I turned 14, we immigrated to the United States. We came to Virginia, Northern Virginia, DC metro area, where my father planted a Chinese immigrant church. And so now then he was a senior pastor then, but also, I guess, a missionary of sorts. So that's my background in a nutshell, just in a very ministry-based household. And from a very young age, we spent almost our entire time around church or doing church-like activities. It was very much intentionally and organically faith-based.
Yeah.
And my father, personality-wise, he is a very passionate man.
He is a thick, like, he's got just, even like the few times I met him, he just has this, like, the charisma, right? Like, you really need, as a missionary, you have to have a level of charisma to be able to connect with people. And he's such a strong, fun personality. And you can just tell he loves being Korean.
Without realizing it, yeah. He is very Korean. And another thing to know about my father is that he was raised extra traditionally. His father, my grandfather, was very traditional. It was a very Confucian household where everybody had very distinct roles. The woman, the man, the children, all about filial piety, and also a very strong sense of duty and a very strong sense of hierarchy, and also a very strong sense of gender roles. And my father was quite progressive. He's not really progressive, but he was progressive
For
in
his
that
household,
for his household, because he broke out of a lot of those traditional molds. Yet at the same time, he still was very traditional. So he himself would consider himself progressive. But if you compare it to other modern families, our household was very traditional, but not as ultra traditional.
It still saves you from the past.
Yes. So that was how I was raised, in a very quite traditional, hierarchical, patriarchal, and very mission-minded, ministry-driven household. And my father truly loved the Lord, and loves the Lord. Loves the Lord with all of his heart and all of his soul and all of his might. He was also very purpose-driven. Like, he didn't need to read that purpose-driven book by Rick Warren. That's just how he was wired to be. And once he realizes something is true and what is right, he will sprint towards it without any pausing, without turning left to the right. He just goes full on sprinting. And to this day, he is still sprinting towards that goal. And it's very noble. And it is very admirable. And from a very young age, I had so much respect and admiration for my father. And I knew that what he was doing was a higher calling in a way. But as a child growing up in that environment, and with the level of intensity my father had for his mission, for God, when there were times when it felt very heavy. When spiritually and maturity-wise, and developmentally, and maybe it's just like my own personality-wise, like I was not ready for that kind of spiritual pressure. And there were moments when it did feel like a lot of pressure instead of just a liberating gift of grace, of a freedom to enjoy God. There were a lot of rigidity in this is how we worship the Lord. This is how we honor God. This is how we honor our parents. This is how you practice obedience to God. There were a lot of structures in place that I felt was, when I look back, was maybe more than they needed to be. But it was all from an intense love my father had for both God and for his children. And he was very particular in doing things right. And he always said to me that because he himself was not born and raised in a Christian family, he always had so much envy for Christian families. He talked about when he was a child, he would walk past an American missionary family and he would see them worshiping, doing family worship. And he was like, oh,
Yeah.
I wish I had that in
Yeah.
my household. And this is interesting because he implemented that in his own household. And now me, when I look back, I'm like, I grew up in that, and I realized, no, that's not how I want to do things. Like he had an idealized version of that American missionary family that he knew, and he tried to implement it with kind of his very Confucian ways. And now I'm like, okay, obviously I still want to do family worship, but maybe I would do it a little bit different.
But what about your mom? Because you talked about your mom, so I'm wondering, was your mom more of just kind of like a silent supporter, and she said this is just how you do it as well because your dad said so? Or
as I said, like my family was very patriarchal, so a lot of the decisions were kind of dictated by my father. And another thing is that my parents are 6 years apart. My mother is 6 years younger, so already she was like much younger. And also she was not a Christian when they got married.
Oh, okay.
Or at least like she was a baby Christian.
So she's still young.
I talked to her about this, and she just kind of came to the faith very just casually. She didn't have like a come to Jesus moment like my father did. So even when he got called to be a missionary, she personally did not feel that calling. It was not like, oh yes,
I'm
a sense of
joining you into
mission.
this.
Yes, it was more like, oh yeah, this is the right thing to do. Okay, all right. If my dad said that you want to do this, she'd be like, oh, okay. Like
she didn't have strong.
She didn't have strong opinions on things, and she was still growing in her faith. Whereas my father was very passionate. So I don't very much recall with the spiritual practices. My mother leading. It was definitely my father who was leading it.
Okay. That makes sense too. Also, because like when we've talked about just like our experiences of being in Ummas too, it still like fits. Like your mom just was like, she was there. She saw herself, from what I'm gathering, is like truly just as the supporter of your father's mission.
And she has said that. I asked her, what do you think your role is? And she said, I am a supporter. I support your father.
Which honestly, knowing what I know about your dad, it was a really good match.
They are a great match. And I mean, I don't want to give an impression that your marriage was in any way.
No, because they're so happy when you see them together. They look.
She wanted
so much,
and she wanted a husband to lead her. And she wanted a husband who would protect her and guide her, and that's what she got.
Your dad definitely stepped into all of that. For me, I did not grow up in a missionary home. Although all of my mom's siblings were either pastors or they married pastors. My mom, classic, she was like, no. But so for me, I grew up like primarily in Los Angeles, Southern California. So if you're a Southern California Korean listening to this, you know that they're, in general, Koreans, I think at large, the cultural aspect of the church. Like you go to church. It doesn't mean you're a Christian per se, that you're a Christian home, but there's this cultural community because I think there's such a strong community base in the Korean church that you naturally are drawn to go to a church because that's where you find your community.
Especially as immigrants, you need a community
you
center.
Need support. And they're so supportive. I mean, Korean churches, like you eat the meals there. I ate my entire breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
It's a whole day thing.
It's a whole day thing. Like it's like you live your Sunday at church. Like it's not like the American thing where you go for your service and you're out. So like for me, church was kind of more of a cultural thing, like you go to. But not because my parents were big on cultural, like spiritual practices at home. Not because my dad or my mom said like, we should pray at home or anything. For me, I kind of just naturally always had a strong draw towards God. Even like when we would have like church nights, like as a young kid, I remember like I had to be no more than 5 years old or 6 years old. They had a call to faith. Like if you want it, and this is so Korean, because even though we feel we're Presbyterian, but we all function like a little Pentecostal.
Like Korean culture in general is
just like all weird.
Yeah.
It's like we say we're Baptist, like we say we're Presbyterian and stuff. I'm like, But you come to a worship night, there is nothing Presbyterian about how we're functioning. There, tongues, everything. Everyone's falling to the ground. But yeah, I remember like going and like praying and raising my hand. And there's just something, a part of me that I always just felt like pulled towards the curiosity of knowing God. And it was always self-driven for me. So like and I think my kunimo, like she recognized that. So she kind of poured a little into it. So like she bought me like a picture Bible because like they basically raised me because my mom was a single mom. So she worked all the time. So I was at her house and my aunt was a pastor. She was an ordained Baptist pastor. So I would dig through her Bible. She eventually like found like a comic book Bible, but it was like thick. It was not a child thick. Like it was same length as a regular Bible. And I like flew through it and I knew all the stories and I read it multiple times. By myself, like as just like a kid. And I would even have like encounters. And like this sounds probably weird for some people, but I remember one time being really sick. And I was like really sick and they were worried because I kept having this recurrent high fever. And I remember in the middle of the night, and this was like I had to have been somewhere between 7 to 9. I went to the bathroom and when I came back from the bathroom, I saw a person sitting on my bed. It was in the middle of the night. He was glowing. And I was like, what's happening?
Did you not freak out?
No. And so that's why I felt like it truly was an encounter with Jesus because I felt peace. Like I wasn't scared, but I was kind of thinking, what's with the glowing person on my bed kind of deal, right? It's kind of, yeah. And I was just kind of like, huh? And I remember he was just sitting on my bed and he was just smiling at me. And I just remember I was like crawling into my bed, just locked eye contact. And like, you're just going to hang out with me tonight? What's going on? And it was like the Jesus I saw in the Bible. Like that was the Jesus I knew.
So at that time you knew it was Jesus?
Yeah, I instantaneously in my heart, I knew that was Jesus. Like there's no question in my mind. And I was like, okay. And I just remember he was just smiling at me and I like tucked myself into bed and I pulled my blanket up and he was just smiling at me and I was staring at him like, sup? And then eventually I just laid down and I like opened my eyes and I thought he'd be gone and he was still there. He stayed there until I fully knocked out.
Wow.
Like he was there every single time I opened my eyes. And then eventually I fell asleep. And when I woke up, my fever had broke. And I remember I told my mom, I was like, oh, I think I saw Jesus last night, which caused a whole flurry amongst all the aunts. All the emos came rushing and they're like inquiring. And then that's when like my kunimo started realizing, I was like, oh, Joyce has faith. Like she was like, Joyce has faith. But I may have had that, but my faith still went in and out. But it was ever since I was young, there was just a natural, like, there was a certainty in my heart that I was like, Jesus is real. And I grew up in the church and, you know, classic Korean church kid. I like my entire life was the church. So my brother was a youth pastor. So like a lot of my life was just kind of living life in church. All of my friends were in the church. I went to junior high. Once I went to junior high, that's when I broke off and went to my own church, which my mom was very uncomfortable with. But she let go and let me do that. And I just went to church with my best friend at the time. And I was there at that church from all the way through junior high up until almost my senior year of high school, which is when I moved. And I was like involved, like on the worship team, on the leadership team. Like that was my life. And so for me, I think it became more, it wasn't about spiritual practices. It was just community and life for me. That's just what it was. And
so what you're saying is that it wasn't like your mother at home, like, hey, sit down, let's read this Bible together, let's worship.
No, I watched my brothers pray. My brothers they kind of had like their highs and lows, but they're coming because they grew up in the faith in the 90s church revival. So in the 90s in Los Angeles area, SoCal, there was this crazy revival and my brothers came to faith really during that time. And they brought me in with that. So I was like in like elementary school going to these like revivals and I didn't know what was going on. And I'm just like, okay, singing vineyard songs, play the guitar. But so they have like a very kind of like almost on fire faith. But I think sometimes when you have fiery faiths, they're also very quick to extinguish.
Yeah.
So for my brothers, they kind of had this like up and down thing, but they love the Lord. And I would like watch them pray. And my brothers sometimes would be like, come and pray with me. But I mean, you're asking an elementary school kid to be on hands and knees, blasting Worship Now 1999 music And like, he's like praying. And I'm like, I didn't understand, even though he was trying to kind of show me this practice, he didn't understand per se. And so for me, it was just kind of more of, that was the closest I ever got to someone saying like, hey, let me show you practice. I got really close to like my 전도사님, my youth pastor, when I was like in junior high school. And the pastor we got by the time I was in high school was much more practical, and he was a little bit more Presbyterian. But he was also like, he kind of pushed into our faith practices a little bit more. But yeah, so that was kind of like my childhood experience. And then once I got up to like, but that was really hard because my faith was tied to community. So once I moved in my senior year, I moved to San Diego. I didn't have that. And that's when my faith like completely crumbled. But even then, I always came back to the church.
Yeah.
Like during really hard times of my life, I always ended up going back to the church. I may have left, but I had always ended up coming back to prayer and Bible and back and forth, back and forth. So it was kind of this thing of like, I always knew God was there, and he would like pull me at times where I felt really confused, and I would feel this draw, and so I would go back to church. And Tyler, my current husband, my one and only husband, my husband, he during that time was in faith. So when we met in college, he was kind of the one who would take me to church, and every once in a while, but. Yeah, so that was my childhood experience. It was very community based, very like living it just in my life. But there wasn't like a spiritual practice to like ground me. That didn't really grow until I was post college.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that faith was an environment, and faith was a culture.
Yeah, totally.
But there was not much structures, and there's not much foundation. And there wasn't like a presence at home teaching you, right? But then what I'm also hearing is that God called you.
Yeah.
From a young age. You
Very
responded
young age.
to God, and you had personal experiences of the reality and presence of God, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
I like even remember like just I would see visions and I'd have prayers. I'd have images when I was growing up. And every time I had them as a kid, and I mean like as a kid, elementary school age, I always knew that it was God, or I felt like it was God. So I think the problem was I was a young child interpreting those things that I've seen. And that's like, I think as an adult, when I came to reality of like, oh, that's not truly what that image was about. That's when I was like having a really hard wrestle. I think that's when like conflicts. But I think it was better that I wrestled through that in my college years versus in my adulthood years versus childhood years. But yeah, God had called me, and there was never a doubt or questioning of who he was in my life. I think part of it may have also just been because getting divorced. I think there may have just been like
Your parents getting divorced.
my parents getting divorced. I think maybe I see it as like God, I think, was just protecting me. And so he gave me that level of protection. But of something being steady in my life, despite the chaos that was going around me. Because he was the only thing that, like, I look back all of it, he was the only thing in church community was like the only thing that was ever steady in my life, despite the rest of my life being pretty chaotic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So looking back, let's think about, so this is our background in terms of growing up in the faith.
Yeah.
Now, when we look back, what are some things that you felt was helpful in developing your faith, your spiritual habits, and also just your relationship with God? And what maybe wasn't as helpful in terms of the way you were raised? Yeah.
Yeah. I think mine was like, I bet it's probably on the flip side and opposite of you, right? You grew up with so much rigidity and structure, and mine had none. So I think letting a child try to navigate, I think there's a balance between allowing a child to navigate faith openly and freely so that's unique and individual to themselves. But also, as parents, we are called to guide and to provide some level of structure, or at least an example. So I think for me, what was helpful was actually living a communal Christian life. That was really helpful because it helped. For me, faith was, as a result, like faith is always communal. And that's true. Like our church, the church is communal. Like it isn't just like our own individual practice in our own heart.
Yeah.
There's a greater at large that we are called to. And so I think for me, my mind has always been that kind of mindset of like a communal faith mindset.
And I think that's part of being growing up in an Asian church, especially an Asian American church, because
so pivotal.
my experience at church was also Sunday is a home day thing.
You were there, even not as a pastor's kid, you were there all day, set
and
up.
that is so. I think that's so valuable in really instilling this idea that Christianity, our faith, is a community thing. That this is the body, living life in the body of Christ, and it's not an individual faith that you keep in your heart.
And it's a life, right? And it's an actual, like, it's a practice in itself, and it's not just something that we just go to.
Right. And that's one of the things that kind of shocked me when I came to the United States and attending an American church, and it's done and over in an hour. And then everybody goes home to watch golf or football or to run errands. It was
very
kind of a shock to me that church on a Sunday is just one box to take off out of all the other things that you prioritize.
So I think that was like really something important. So that's why like current practice now, like trying really hard to like build into our community group and like trying to build that. And I think I've been seeing the fruit of that, even just like with Kian, like how he talks about, like he kept calling all the kids yesterday at community group, all of his cousins. And he's like, my cousin came over and he was like pointing at one of our friends, like daughters. He's like, she came over and we got to go swimming. And I was like, yeah, she's your cousin. We'll go with that.
I like that.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, we're all family. Like that's perfect. And that's what I want my kids to think of is like, your church is a family. It may not be your blood family and it may not be your chosen per se family, but it's still a family, which means that you inherently love them. The thing that wasn't helpful though was like just kind of being like no structure, right? And like I think living it only as a community gave it no full deep root because there also has to be an individual aspect because it is a relationship with God at the end of the day. And so I think that was really hard. But I think for me, I was just really blessed with having that connection with God at a young age that I was always attuned to it. Even in the darkest of my life, like when I was deep in the partying and drug community, like I still felt like the pangs of God in my heart. And I'd still feel guilty, even though I had not attended church in years, right?
That was this Holy Spirit.
Yeah, and it was just like very clear to me. And I remember in college, I told God, I straight up told him like, I just need to do it. I just need to live this so I can get it out of my system. And I think God respected that because that's just who I am as a person. Like I'm not the person who's like, I see the danger, I'm gonna walk around. I'm the person who's like, I see it, I need to know what's up. I need to know what it's about and I have to experience it for me to be like, I actually don't like that. Never mind, I didn't really like it. And so I think God was like, all right, at least you're honest. Like, you know what's up. I told him, I was like, I gotta just try it out. But I know you're here and I know you're faithful and I love you, I think. I don't know. And so
it was a time of wandering that
there was a long time and God was still, but every time I was thirsty and needed a life-saving, God was like right there, right? Just like Hagar and her son, and like God, when she thought everything was lost, and like God was like, no, look, there's water right here. Like, don't worry, I am saving you. Like, those moments are so real to me in the Bible because I'm like, oh, that's what God did for me.
So even though you might not have been deeply rooted, there was still a seed planted in you that was waiting to grow.
Yes. And so I think that is a blessing, right? Because I think it may have just been the fact that because I was so deep in my community, that was the seed that needed to give enough root. So I think for me, it's also the practice I want, like that was not helpful, was just leaving me to kind of figure out my own fate. And so I'm hoping to like, we bring a little bit more structure. We talk about God more in our family. We talk about prayer practices. We listen to devotionals, and not to say like it's structures and like we have to do it, but just showing my child like, yeah, you can listen to the Bible when you're just in the car. You don't have to read it at a very specific time in life. Like, God is part of your life. He's not a really structured part of your life. Like, he's just always there. So that has kind of been like what I've been trying to, I think what Tyler and I have been kind of like going into. Yeah. What about yourself?
Yeah. I was reading Deuteronomy 6, that very famous commandment from God. The 6:5-7. It says, love the Lord with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. These words that I'm giving you today are to be in your heart. Repeat them to your children. Talk about them when you sit in your house and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Basically, talk about God all the time. And when I read this and I think back to how I was raised, my parents followed this.
Yeah.
They lived this out. They love the Lord with all their heart, their soul, and their strength. And then they embedded those words into their heart. And then, especially for my father, he repeated them nonstop. Literally, when he's sitting in the house, when we are driving, when we are on vacation, when we're having dinner, when we're having snack, when we're about to sleep, it's like impromptu sermons. And my father's sermons are more than 2 hours long. So I am not kidding. I don't need to say a word. There's no back and forth response. Appa, what does this mean? It's more, he can talk on and on and on like a sermon to his children for hours. There was one time when I was on a phone call with him for 3 hours and I maybe said 3 sentences.
Oh my gosh.
But that's my father in a nutshell. Just to give you an idea of like his personality. He's a passionate, intense guy. So my father did his duty.
Yes.
But I think it was the way he did it. I think that was a kind of the intensity brought and the urgency that his children to experience what he experienced and sees what he sees and feels what he feels. That kind of urgency and that kind of passion, he brought it out in full force upon us rather than maybe because he was still young and he was jealous and he was a missionary to boot. There was not much space for me to be self-driven. Like you talked about how for you, your relationship with God was very much self-driven. For me, I don't think there was much space for there to be an autonomy.
Yeah, ever like self-exploration.
Right.
How unique it is to
And
you.
even when we talked about God, it was my father would fill the space with his words.
Right.
That there wasn't much space for me to really reflect, to ask. There wasn't much space for me to be interested.
Yeah.
Because he was just like droning, like a
Constant,
drone of noise. And as a kid, you're not going to listen to a sermon. You know it's a sermon.
Yeah.
Nobody likes sermons.
Yeah.
People would dedicate a certain space and time for sermons. For that very reason. You're not supposed to be sermonizing all day long. And that was kind of what we got. And my father's idea of family worship, I think he really tried to control it.
Yeah.
And he wanted it to be, maybe his idealized version was probably like kids smiling and like, angelic expressions of wonder and awe of God. But that was not my face. My face was probably of boredom and really resentment that I'm dragged over.
Which probably then created a vicious cycle within him for like, he's like, I need to really make the point to my daughter because she does not look interested. So maybe if I talk even more, then she will build that interest.
Right. My memories of family worship are not good.
Yeah.
All my memories of my family worship is that it always ended in tears and screaming. Because like someone would not listen and someone would just be like completely distracted.
Just
and
like
like
expected young children.
Yes. And then my father, because again, very traditional household, there was a lot of spanking.
Yeah.
And it's not like
It's not
rigid.
spanking.
It's not like here spanked 5 times. Okay, it's more like the Korean spanking of like lifting up your palm and then slapping you over the head.
Yeah.
Like 말 좀 들어.
Yeah, there was velocity.
Yeah,
There was velocity.
And there was a lot of this idea of like you are not showing proper respect and venerance to God. How dare you? And then there was a lot of punishment that also was like, this is God punishing you.
The irony of this.
And I understand my father's heart behind it, but the method was very harmful in the way I looked at God, because God then became something like a chore, but not just a chore, but he was kind of a frightening person.
Yes.
He was not an enjoyable person. And I think this was the biggest part of what was lacking in the way I was raised when it comes to faith, was the lack of joy.
Yes.
Church was not joyful. Family worship was not joyful. Prayers were long. Prayers were like 15 minutes long.
Yeah.
So like the dinner's getting cold, and next is another mini sermon. And I was like, okay, prayers are a drag.
Right.
So I didn't like praying. I didn't like going to church.
Yeah.
I hated family worship.
All fair.
I did not like the Bible, because we also had the Korean Bibles. There was like that old school Korean.
Oh,
You know?
you don't even know what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm saying.
Like it's like King James in Korean. You're
Yeah.
like, what is happening?
So there was not much freedom and space to develop an intimacy with God. And I felt like I had a lot of intellectual knowledge,
Yes.
but I didn't know how to transfer that knowledge into my heart.
Yes.
And I couldn't. And there was also quite a bit of a shame and guilt involved, because there was a sense that I know God is important. I know God is supreme and he's a good being, and I'm supposed to love him. But it's like, how do you force yourself to love something? And he was more of a something than a someone to me. And I would hear a lot of there was so much knowledge, there was so many words describing God, explaining the gospel. There was just so much chatter,
Yeah.
and there was no real experience.
Yeah.
So I don't think I really felt the presence of God the way you felt him. And if I knew anything about God, it was all through my father.
Yeah.
So my father was in a way like my priest, and he was my pastor too. So that kind of complicates the thing. He's my pastor and my father, and he was intensity. And so like my father was a portal through which I knew God.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of unnecessary baggage added to my relationship with God. And furthermore, because we're a missionary family, even before I knew God, I knew mission.
Yes.
And I don't think that was very healthy as well, because from a very young age, it was impressed upon me that my life has to have purpose. I need to be driven towards a righteous and noble goal, a transcendent goal of building the kingdom, glorifying
So much
God,
pressure.
evangelizing, saving souls. And that's great. That every kid should be able to develop that. But I think there is a sequence to it.
Yes.
You know God, and then, because why do you build a kingdom? Because you
know God,
the
and
king.
you have that desire.
Yes, you love the king, and you naturally want to talk about the king. And because there are people who don't know this beautiful, wonderful, awesome thing, and it was hard for me to feel that awe.
Yeah.
Because there was just so many legal stuff,
so many
jumbled
walls
into
getting
it.
into that.
My relationship with God just was complicated with my relationship with my own father.
Yeah.
And his very strict ideas on what it looks like to worship God.
Yeah.
And my father has changed a lot. I think if he were to parent now, he would parent very differently. But back then he was a new Christian as well. He was jealous for his faith, and he himself put a lot of unnecessary burden and stress on himself that he repents of today. But he was parenting as he was growing up.
He was doing as best as he could.
As we are. So I have a lot of grace and understanding for him, but that was just the reality of how I grew up.
Yeah.
And so from a very young age, I have felt this invisible, this need to make something of my life.
I remember talking with you about this, and I remember like even when you're transitioning to becoming a stay-at-home mom, that was a really big struggle, because you're like, but my purpose.
Yes.
My work
And because I developed this idea as a child, I think I was still kind of stuck in that childish mindset of purpose-driven life have to be something grandiose, like going to the mission field, like going up to the pulpit and preaching, or like saving souls or discipling people, like something super hardcore and very tangible. I just had a rigid image of what it was like to be a Christian, what it's like to love and honor God, and what it's like to live life well. That is worthy of God's pleasure.
So with like that experience of that rigidity, like how much of that do you feel like you're going to be bringing it into your home, or do you feel like you're not going to bring any of it into home? Like, because there's still some good and fruit that came from your father's intent, right? Which is also grace from God, because I think it depends. There's something to be said about that the children and the parents are chosen for each other for purpose, right? And so I feel like, I think if your dad had done that to me, I would have been like, peace. If I had that as a dad, like, I think, and knowing my personality, and so like our journeys are very different because of the purpose. So how much of it do you get into your home?
When you're a child, it's a little different. Like, I have a strong personality too, and as I grew older, I butted head with my father a lot. But when I was younger,
you're like, what is going on?
You get whipped. I don't want to get whipped. I nursed a lot of grievances in my own heart. But I wasn't really able to express it. And that was part of the problem. I wasn't able to feel safe to go to my father and tell him exactly how I was feeling. Because in fear of another lecture, or just like being told that I'm wrong, to feel this way. So again, like my parents lived out Deuteronomy 6:5-7. And when I look back, there were a lot of things that they did well. They did teach me fear of the Lord, respect for the Lord, and also spiritual disciplines. Like every Sunday, I don't care how you feel about it, we are going to church. There are certain things that is like, no, you don't get to decide. Like, for I and my family, we will serve the Lord. And so every Sunday we do that. And then also growing up, we had a lot of missionaries coming to our family. There was just a lot of stories, people's real life testimonies. So even if I didn't myself feel like I really experienced God in an intimate, profound manner, I was filled with stories of God. So I collected all these testimonies of people I know whose life radically changed. Even though I might not have had a deep relationship with God, I knew He was real. And there was a period in my life when I did try to turn away. I had a really bad relationship with my parents back then, and I left home, and I remember distinctly leaving my Bible behind. And it was a very deliberate act of like, nope, I'm kind of done with this. I need to just like figure out my own stuff. I didn't go to church. And I remember when I left my Bible, my hands were kind of trembling. I was like, this is an act.
You're like, you knew very much. You're like
what it meant. I knew what it meant.
What it was going to do to your parents by them seeing that Bible left behind.
And again, it was very much tied to my relationship with my parents as well. My relationship with my dad was bad. Hence, also my relationship with God was bad. But I remember thinking, this is it. I don't know where I'm going to end up with my faith now, but I'm going to leave my Bible here. And God, I'm not going to church. But at the same time, I'm praying to God that I'm not going to church. So there was never a moment in my life when I felt that God is not real. And that was a huge part to due to my parents. They did instill faith in me. They instilled certain important spiritual disciplines in me, like going to church, tithing, prayer, the importance of church community, and the importance of living life serving others for the sake of serving others. Being raised in a ministry family, it was always, my parents lived it out. They lived self-sacrificially. They lived to lift up other people. And I knew and saw that as beautiful. And I I wanted to do that as
Yes.
well. Yeah. So now with my own family, I mean, Tove is 3 and Uri is 11 months now.
Yeah.
So they're still very young. I want to do what the Bible told me to do, which is number 1, love God with all my heart, my soul, and my might.
Yeah.
And then also talk about Him.
Yeah.
But within that commandment, there's so much freedom.
Yeah.
Within those boundaries, God allows so much freedom. It doesn't mean pulling them into a family worship and we need to play the guitar and sing classic hymns and open this Korean Bible and then read these ancient words. And then you have to sit still and listen to every word with a joyful face.
Right.
Realize that God actually gives so much freedom in parenting. And there is so much relief in that.
Yes.
Okay, God, there are just 2 things that you asked me to do in raising my kids in the faith. Number 1, love you.
Yes.
Number 2, talk about you.
Yes.
And so I'm experimenting.
Yeah.
Because we're still young. I think I'm just kind of like, okay, let's see what works.
Yes.
Number 1, I need to guard my own heart and protect my own heart so that my mind and my heart is not distracted and turned away from God.
Yes.
I might not be able to sit down and read the Bible for an hour, but I do try to implement spiritual disciplines in my own life where I am listening to God's word at least once a day.
Yeah.
Either whether it's turning on the daily liturgy podcast, which I highly recommend, or just having the Bible playing on audio. And one thing I started doing several months ago is that every morning during breakfast time, we do Bible time.
Yeah.
And I mean, Toby's not really sitting still. There, he's running around. He's bopping up and down.
Yep.
And Uri is mashing bananas into her hair, and she's squealing, and it's kind of chaos. But I do it just for developing a habit.
Yes.
Of hey, this is important. I know that right now you can't sit still, but I'm still going to read this Bible.
Yeah.
It's the Jesus Story Bible book.
Yeah.
This is what we do every morning because it is important to start the day acknowledging God. And to be honest, the person who gets the most out of it is myself.
Right.
Because it's hard as a young mother to have these spiritual practices in place, especially when you don't have a good night's sleep. So you can't wake up early in the morning and be like, oh, let me have my Bible time before the kids get up.
Yeah.
I kind of usually wake up as my kids wake up.
Yeah.
So being able to sit and just read the Bible, even though it's a children's Bible, the way
Jesus storybook Bible.
It is. It
brings
is
me to tears sometimes.
It is. It is
so
profound. And I do all the voices.
Yeah.
And I try to make it as fun. And then Tove sometimes will get interested depending on the pictures.
Yeah.
Or like if it's, a giant fish or something. And then I read out from a liturgical book. I read a very short liturgy.
Yeah.
And that's also for myself. It's like quite mature language. So it's really for myself. But Tove actually likes it when I read it. He might not pay attention, but he always reminds me to read from it. So again, that's kind of the habit thing. I think
practice.
He just has developed the habit of, hey, it's Bible time. Okay.
Yes.
And so that's where we start.
Yeah.
And then before we go to bed, we always do prayer.
Yes.
I do the Lord's Prayer. And he can kind of
recite
it, the ends of it. I will say, Our Father in, and He's in heaven.
Yeah.
And then he will want me to pray about 5 more times. I'm not sure what it is to God, but I think he just wants to prolong time.
Yes.
But I do that. And then throughout the day, I'm trying to be more mindful. Like if he hurt himself, hey, let's pray.
Yeah.
Or like he's sad about something, let's pray.
Yes.
God listens.
Yes.
And then another thing that I do now, so I'm always the last one to go to bed. So by then everyone's asleep and it's quiet and it's the most tenderest I feel for my entire family.
Yeah.
And I will creep into Tove's room.
Yeah.
And I'll touch different parts of his body. And that's when I really have a quiet time to just like pray. And I can actually hear myself. And like if I'm touching his hand, I will just pray over his hands that God will have him have strong hands that will help others, things like that.
Yeah.
And through that, I will just pray for my own mothering.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know what I'm doing. That's why I ask a lot of these questions, and sometimes other mothers feel like I'm trying to rush things, but honestly, it's just uncertainty.
Yeah.
Like, is this supposed to happen? I don't know. And how am I supposed to discipline my kids?
Yeah.
Like, I have so many uncertainties, and every child is different, and everybody's parenting philosophies are different. So I literally do not know what I'm doing as a mother. And so those are the moments when I'm like, God, whatever mistakes I made today, I repent, but also just wash them clean. I ask you to purify it and help me let it not leave a mark on my kids, but also edify and purify my own heart. Give me grace, give me patience, give me wisdom, because I need you, Lord.
Yeah.
That's kind of a dedicated like 2-minute prayer that I do.
Yeah.
And then throughout the day, I'm sure you can empathize, but it's just a lot of like, oh, Chia.
Mine's more
Oh,
like,
Lord.
Lord, help me see my children as
Yeah,
you see them. Lord,
exactly.
Help me see my children as...
Yeah, it's a lot of breathe in, breathe out, cries of desperation.
Yes.
Please do not yell. Just telling myself, don't yell, don't yell, don't yell.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, for me, like, I've really just been focusing on... Because Kian is a very curious child, and thankfully his curiosity is very self-driven. So I've been working on building his curiosity and building that God is real. And so for us, we read the Bible and we pray every night. The mornings are really chaotic for us because we have a really early drop-off. So like trying to get the kids to between 7:30 and 8 to get dressed and eat and like get out the door is like so chaotic. But on the times that I have them in the car, I'll play from the Dwell app and I'll play their kid devotional. And like I've watched Kian through the camera and he actually sits and he listens. I don't know how much he absorbs, but that's not my job, right? Like my job is to simply provide the seeds, like provide opportunities to allow him to soak. But it's been really sweet to see him cling on to the idea of family and community and to really be more inquisitive of God. And to like even sometimes like the act of prayer, because sometimes when I am really struggling, I'll just say like, I really need to pray because Umma is having a really hard time. And I think for me, it's been really showing who to lean to in times of weakness, which is God and not on anything else. Or I'll pray for forgiveness in front of them. So I think for me, I've never had that example of like humanity brought into faith. And also just because I'm hanging on for dear life and the Lord knows, like literally the Lord knows how thin that string is that I'm hanging on. I think that has been fruitful because that consistency, I've seen him, like I've told you, like after the miscarriage, Kian like comes out in prayer randomly, which I'm like gonna tear up thinking about it. Or like if I was talk about like, hey, we need to pray for someone, he's like, let's do it. There's no hesitation in the act of prayer. For me, I didn't have any of that structure. So for me, I'm trying to kind of like figure out what does structure or life with God look like that's apart from just the community of the church, but like within the home. So that has been an interesting thing for myself. And I think for me has been like actually now breathing and praying out loud more in times of my own frustration so that my kids can see, okay, you can talk to God. It doesn't have to be just at night.
Yeah.
Like, you can talk to God when you're feeling really like you need help. And I've seen Kian do that. So sometimes he may or may not low-key scold me in his prayer, but that's cool. Wow. He's like, help God, she looks really mad. I'm like, God, help mom because she looks really mad. And I was like, I sure am. You should definitely ask God for some prayer right now because Lord knows the amount of anger that I'm feeling. So yes, like it has been a very interesting journey of being a parent and navigating faith because it's so unique, like we've talked about, like you've said, like, and it's so individual.
Yeah. But to summarize, it sounds like for you, your main thing right now that you didn't have, that you want to have is some structure.
Yeah. And for you, it's more of like allowing freedom to explore, but also showing practical ways of how to maintain a life that is still structured around the Bible and about God, but it isn't so rigid that you feel like you failed something if you didn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, like I still want to implement the disciplines, the
Yes.
spiritual disciplines that my parents raised me in.
Yeah.
But for me, the number one thing, I would love there to be joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to help create an environment where going to God is a joyful act.
Yes.
That God is someone that you can't wait to know more of,
Yeah.
rather than this strict father-like figure with a beard and arms crossed and like
Yeah.
wagging his finger like, oh.
Because that is not God. God is a God who is continually chasing you because of his love. And all he just wants is a relationship with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, I want my children to love God even more than I love God. Because I know my limitations right now. But I don't know how. Like, if I'm setting a standard for how much I love God, do they only meet to that standard? I don't know. Those are questions that I'm mulling in my head. But at the same time, I know that a lot of things are not within my control.
Yeah.
But again, just two things. Love God with all my heart, my soul, and my might. And to the best of my capabilities. And number two, talk about God, right? And then leave everything else to God.
Yeah.
That's
Which
all
is all
we
we
can
can do. And on that note, I think this is where we can close out. So
Let's
please do pray.
Yeah. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this blessing of being able to call you Father, Lord. Just remembering that even though we are Ummas, that we are daughters first, Lord, and help us continue to establish this relationship with you, Lord, where we can call out to you, Abba, Father, anytime we want, and deepen our relationship with you, Lord, that we can truly love you with all of our heart, and of all of our soul, and of all of our might, and that our kids can see the love that we have for you, Lord, and that they know that you are lovely, that you are wonderful, that you are someone to be delighted over, Lord. I pray that for all of our listeners, that they will feel your love right now, and they will respond to that love with a natural, instinctive love, Lord, and that the children that we're raising, the next generation, will be a generation that also will love you with all their hearts and all their souls and all their might. Pray this in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Thank you so much for listening. If you've been liking our episodes, please follow, like, subscribe, or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd love to connect with you and hear your thoughts and feedback. You can find us on Instagram at The Old Umma Club, or reach out to us at theoldummaclub@gmail.com. Gotta give a big thank you to Kevin MacLeod for our music. Until next time, Ummas, may the Lord bless you and keep you sane, hydrated, and fulfilled the way only He can.